Hey folks, Kevin here. Well, it's July 26, 2020, and today what I thought I'd do is answer one of the questions about that Cabo had asked. What's this story about access roads? So maybe I missed it, but it's not clear to me what you mean by access roads. And I probably mentioned access roads when I was talking about the work that I'm doing at the edge of the Beaver dams down and back, or the work that I'm doing with the Chinampas. But access roads helps me to move pieces of equipment and get supplies, go and get resources at various zones on the property. So what do I mean by zones? So first off, I'm not talking about we're in zone 5A, and that's a cold hardiness description. So zone 5A in Oswego, New York, we have so many cold hours each year, and it helps us for certain trees to know, geez, how hardy the trees are, or the bushes are, or the plants are to particular zones. Some don't tolerate frozen temperatures. Some require so many chill hours in order to be productive and produce fruit. So, but that's not what I'm talking about today when I'm discussing zones. And access roads has a lot to do with zones. So when we're talking about zones in permaculture, we're working around the concept of how much time we spend in an area, how much interaction is required from us in that particular zone, and I guess those are the two main things. You know, the functions that zone has, the time that we spend in that area, and certainly how much interaction and needs there are for those zones. So, for example, let's say we sleep 8 hours a day. And so that's 1/3 of our life. So zone 0 is the place where we're spending that time eating and drinking, sleeping, those sorts of things, and as well as other activities. So we spent the bulk of our time in zone 0. In zone A, it might be our kitchen garden or vegetable garden, the place that we're going out to. It might be your chicken coop or any other, your pets, where if you have a habitat just for various pets and all. It really requires daily interactions, time to go to those areas to meet the needs of whatever lives in that zone. So zone 0 is where we're eating and drinking and sleeping. That's inside of the house. It's where the family is. Zone 1 is the area that we're going outside and we're spending time. Now, I shouldn't say going outside. So in permaculture, we could be talking about a school system, a work area. So all of these concepts of the time we spend, the amount of interaction, the needs of others and plants and so on, can be applied to all different aspects. I'm using it in this context here on our property. So zone 0 is our home, where we're sleeping, preparing foods, eating and drinking. Zone 1 will be the garden plots, where we come out every day. We spend some time in the garden plots. Could be the chicken coop, where you've got to meet the needs of the chickens every single day. Make sure they're fed. Make sure that their needs are met. So that's what I think of as zone 1. Those places where you're spending the most amount of time other than your zone 0 to meet the needs and interact with the pets or the chickens or the rabbits or your gardens, your horses, your cattle, whatever it may be. Zone 2 is the next level of time that you're spending in an area, and that zone 2 could easily be a place like the barn. It could be your workshop, it could be your garage, you know, depending on what you actually do, what hobbies you have, what requires more interaction and all. So zone 2, the workshop, certainly a place where I'm doing the maintenance on the equipment, all of that sort of thing. And then we get to zone 3, we think about the place, and if you're a market gardener, the crops, if you're selling firewood, it could be in an area where there's trees, or you're storing the wood and curing the wood. It could be the permanent raised beds, where you're going to a farmer's market, or you're doing your CSA, community supported agriculture. So zone 3 could be that sort of level. Zone 4 is the area where the food forests are. Now, Zone 3 and Zone 4 each one of these zones have gray areas. It isn't like a black and white separation from each one of these zones. So, like the food forests are Zone 4. The maple forest for gathering the sap, the mushrooms gathering. It could be the place where you're harvesting wood for burning in your wood burning stove, that sort of thing. And Zone 5 is what's, I guess most people would consider it the wild child, the thing where you just let it go and let nature take its course. And those are the general concepts in permaculture of the different zones. And there's many other nuances, but the thing I would say is don't get hung up on the black and white and hard edges of these systems of each one of these zone descriptions. So when we get on Pepe, we'll be going around into some different areas. And as I've mentioned in other videos, we had a disease process, the emerald ash boring insect, which has destroyed so many of our ash trees. So that's decimated so many trees. And some of these ash trees were huge. They're full canopy trees. And with them dying over time, and they come down and they crash on some of the cherry trees, the oak trees, the maple trees, it does damage to them, and those trees are more susceptible to disease and death, early death and dysfunction as well. So as a result of so much of the damage on the property, predominantly due to the emerald ash boring insect, as well as wind shear events that we've had, high winds and all, I do look at Zone 5 a little bit differently. The other thing that I would say about our Zone 5 that isn't necessarily just a wild child that you may go for little walks in, this facility someday will hopefully be a forever wild location where people can come and do bird watching, do bird census, can be nature photography, those sorts of things, and certainly have educational components, including foraging for medicinal plants. The other thing that I'm doing here is I've talked before about the ethics, self-care, earth care, people care, and future care. Well, future care is one of those things that I really want to today, not specifically today, I want to be reseeding all of these areas that have been changing over time due to the damage from the insects, from man in the past, from the winds, all of these different things. So I want to be seeding black walnut trees. I want to be seeding some of the redwoods, the bald cypress, and I certainly want to make sure that we maintain many of the native species here, other than the ash trees, which the emerald ash boring insect is still here. So I want to meet the needs of all of the indigenous wildlife species that are here, while at the same time investing in the future for my grandchildren's children to be able to go ahead and harvest some of the good wood species that are here, and always being able to collect nuts and all, for not just for the wildlife but for people consumption as well. So we don't typically adhere to a strict description of the Zone 5 as being completely wild and untouched, because we'll be collecting maple syrup from areas even into the Zone 5 where we'll be going. We'll be moving out some of those dead trees from Zone 5. We'll be pulling out some of those terrible vines that have done so much damage to the trees in Zone 5. And we'll be reaffirming structural integrity to the beaver dams, because there's lots of folks around here that want to get rid of the beavers, and we want that water resource here. And we'll be working with putting a solar water pump down in the beaver pond to help with irrigation needs up here in the future as well, and to help maintain the pond levels as well. So those are all things that I am considering doing on this property. And I know that the question was about access roads, but our ability to get the appropriate sized equipment into each one of these locations. Certainly there'll be walking trails, but there'll also be places that we can get our truck and excavator down into the area to move out some of these trees that are broken down. Now, in a strict Zone 5 area, we might move some of the timber that has fallen and maybe inoculate it with mushroom spores. But in this case, because I'll be extending the access around some of the beaver dams, one of the things I'll be doing is taking those logs and incorporating it into those areas. We'll be building more soil in those areas, creating more inoculum for transporting and inoculating our food forest areas as well. So I hope that that introduction, I know it was a bit long-winded about zones, and now what I'll do is I'll put the helmet cam on and we'll go down with Pepe and take a ride through a few of the areas down and back that I'm going to be opening up, and some of the reasons why I've got to get to these areas so I can maintain some of the areas so that it can gradually be reforested with the appropriate with appropriate flora and fauna as well. So here we go. Okay, before I hop on Pepe, I'm just going to come up over here to orient you. Over there is where the house is, right over there. The Eastern Gardens area is there. You can see the corn from the next to the workshop barn area where the central garden is, and the bioremediation canal system goes right up, just on the other side of this pergola, between the two sets of pergolas, and then we go into pond 3 over here. But last year I posted a video about starting a living fence with curly willows. Well, that fence was a barrier, going to be a barrier between my neighbor, which we surround them on 3 sides. I wanted to create a visual barrier, because one that is a that has a hedgerow besides it being a living fence, that we can take care of, create habitats and all. And in order to do that, I've got to get the mini excavator up in there to make a clear path right across where the living fence will go, and where I can actually get many of these dead ash trees out of here. So many of these trees that you see around, those are 2 dead ash trees right there. This is a dead ash tree. Of course, all these trees, most of these are dead ash trees on the ground. That's an ash tree there. That's an ash tree. That's a maple. So every time that these trees die and I don't get to them before the windstorms come and snap them off, they damage the adjacent trees. And if they, and as I've shown you in the food forest videos, when we don't prune a tree after it's been damaged, you may have a very narrow angle between the new limb that comes up, the 2 limbs, and that can encourage it to do splits. And that's one of the things that decreases the value of the wood and increases the chances of the tree being lost during a windstorm as well, or disease entering into those areas, especially because we have these winters where we get frosts and all, so we get moisture down in between the 2 limbs that are separating if the bark is embedded, and then when it freezes it expands and it creates more of a problem, and then when the wind storms the trees start to separate. So in order to manage the forest so that we can give every tree the optimal chance for survival, one, we have to remove all of the ones that are absolutely diseased and can transmit disease to others. So the emerald ash boring insects have wiped out just about every single ash tree we have on the property. Not everyone, but just about. So having access to get the equipment in so I can get the material out of there. If this was a forever wild zone, we just leave the logs there. We might come in and inoculate them with mushrooms, but because we're doing work in areas where we can take this tree and burn the wood of a tree that's dead but isn't decomposed, we can use that instead of harvesting any other wood. By getting rid of these bad trees that are here, the ones that are diseased and dying or dead, we help to save the trees. Like these maples will be great for tapping for maple syrup. Those tulips will be wonderful for building kitchen cabinets and all. And we will reforest this whole area, leaving mostly, you know, the maples that are here, the oaks that are here, the poplar, some of the poplars that are here as well. We'll try and maintain the diversity and enhance the diversity as well. So having access to be able to get the appropriate piece of equipment into the area for the periods of time that work needs to be done. The level of interaction is so important. So here we are over here at Pond 3. And we're just going to go a small little access road right around here. There are other roads that I haven't opened up yet. But the swale systems are also very important to maintain the swales. So this is a drainage swale that comes from the forest up there, and I'll be putting a pond and other swales in there so I can try and capture and reuse as much nutrient-rich water as possible and meet the needs of all the wildlife species that are here as well. Now, the water levels are way down here, but there's an access road around here. I have a couple more dead trees to take out of here, but this is going to be a beautiful shade garden in here as well. Not for people consumption, there will be some medicinal herbs here, but mainly for the wildlife and creating habitats for them. So we'll get on Pepe and we'll head down and back. So water naturally collects up in this area here. I'll be putting a swale system in that connects and goes into this drainage swale and feeds into the pond here as well. So that's my scrap pile. I got to clean that up. Some building materials over there. So one of the jobs that I've been dealing with recently is making sure that we get our wood supplies in. So far I've got a good 2.5 years of wood ready here for heating our home, but there's probably only 1 year's worth of wood for heating our home and running the sugar, making maple syrup. So I always like to have 3 years of wood caught up, 3 years of food stored as well. So I think what we'll do, instead of going down in the forest that way, we'll come out that way. So this is the area that the large hugelkultur systems were in. I've been doing lots of raking down in here and picking rocks. I still have a bunch that I've got to pick up yet down here, but I've been raking the area, picking rocks, getting those things set, because this will all be a productive food processing area here with the blueberry bushes and all. So we have, as you can see, I have the wood splitter here. I'll bring the trees down into this area here, let them cure for a year, for 1 year, and then cut them up and split the wood and bring it up in there. But I got behind this last couple of years, and that's the almond part of the food forest over in this area. Pond 5 is up there. That one's real low. We'll be talking about that. But we've talked about the black locust all along this living fence and the elderberry plants. Well, this area here, it still drops off 6 feet to my neighbor's property. And I've been building this up with whatever dirt, debris, rock. When I say debris, I'm talking about bushes, poison ivy, all that sort of thing. And lots of branches and wood, and bringing this all up, and this will be the extension. This is what everything looked like when I was midway through getting the where the black locusts are up above. So getting this all set with the soil, and this is basically right along the property line here between my neighbor and I. And so what I'm doing is trying to save as many trees as possible, but I'm covering up the old stone walls that were here, that was just on my side of the property. So here's an old stone wall. So when I take down a tree and dig out the stump, I don't know if you can appreciate it, that's one stump there. What I do is I cut the stump off, the trunk of the tree real close to the ground level, turn it upside down, dig it in there, and so there's another one there. So this is all lined with tree stumps that I've been pulling out that have been dead over time. And of course the logs that that are either too decomposed or a challenge to split, I lay them down, the brush on here, and it's hugelkultur all in here as well. So I'm building up this area. There'll be more and more soil that gets built up on here, and this way I can create a living fence with with habitats and diversity on this edge of the property. That'll also be a big windbreak from the natural westerly winds that pound us so hard here. And that's really important, not only for maintaining habitat spaces for the various the insectivores and all of the beneficial mammals, reptiles, amphibians and all, and birds. We want to have these habitats established because they're going to help us, because we'll be growing food all over the rest of the property. And we need to have a nice big wind barrier so that we're not damaging our forests here. Now the deer come through here. I'll leave openings for the deer to be able to make their way through the regular places. This is one of the deer paths that's in here. So this living fence line will go down here, and this will also be an access road to get down along the property edge, so I can maintain things when the trees break in the windstorm and come down and smash across the roadways. We'll head down one of the other areas that I've been working on. So this area that's going to be planted with blueberry bushes, squash plants will be planted back here that require more space. Again, I'm doing a lot of work in here, got a lot more work to do. This was all a hugelkultur system here. This was all hugelkultur systems. Excellent soil in these areas. And so now we're going by one of the swales. Now I've got a lot more work to do to dress this up and clean up in this area as well. But these swales will be really gradual slope, but this is a swale to gather the water as it comes down this slope here. Now this is really roughed out right now. It works its way around and goes into pond 7. So this is pond 7, really, really low. Blueberry bushes all around the ponds. And this is another hugelkultur system I'm building here now. Another drainage swale here. So when the water comes down through the various ponds and canal systems from all up high in the woods over there, and it makes its way down. I recapture it, redirect it back around this way, heading more east. Although the property slopes to the west, I bring it into pond 7. It goes across here through this swale here and dumps it back eastwardly into the woods, because the spillway is right over there straight ahead of us. The sugar shack, the sugar shack and root cellar floor drains and perimeter drains, they all dump into this system as well. So they can backfeed into this pond 7, but when this gets high enough, it goes out the spillway and goes out into the woods. And that's an area that when I talked about the chinampas and all, we drove down those paths. We'll go back up those in a few minutes. But these are logs and trees that I've been saving for several years that have been dead. I laid them down, and when I did the work around opening up around the swales and all, I took that soil and put it on top of the wood, which will help to speed up the decomposition of the wood. And there's still habitats for the wildlife in that hugelkultur system there. Now so there are access roads that go down into various areas, down into these areas. So there's a roadway that goes over there to meet in one area that goes towards the living fence line that I'm building along the property line there. This is a hugelkultur system here that's almost completely broken down. All of this soil will be used in other parts of the property. Different access roads go to different areas. So I had to come down here with Bumblebee in order to remove the trees that had fallen down across this roadway. So here's a tree that had fallen down across here. I took these trees out and incorporated them into the Beaver Pond Dam and some of the roadways. So going back up that way there is another access road going up to the property line. The Beaver Dam systems are all to our right over on this side of Pepe. I haven't opened up any of those access roads yet. So this roadway that I'm on right now brings us up to the edge of where the ponds are that the beaver have all been maintaining. And for the most part, that's all going to be forever wild, a true Zone 5, other than me building the access out around the dam edges so that I can maintain those areas. I need access to get into this area because ultimately I want to bring a big piece of equipment down here, a large excavator, so that I can create a large pond in this area so we create more habitat, more water reserves, and that can help to feed into the other ponds over here as well. The material that gets pulled out of here will help to rebuild all of these access roads. This road that I'm on right now is all the result of bringing down with a big payloader, bringing down the soil from the base of ponds. It was never completed because I ran out of soil because using so much of it. There's a woodcock right over there on the forest floor. This is interesting. If you look at this tree, this maple tree here that fell down, the stump is right there, it fell over. There's enough roots maintained in that area. And what ended up happening is all those little branches that were on this side of it turned up, and it looks like multiple trees here as well. So eventually that's going to be a problem. And these trees, like this tree right here, the one that's a cluster of trees, was injured at some point in time, and ultimately it has died as well. So the trees that are dead in here we want to remove, and that's all good woody material that can be used to reaffirm some of the dam walls as well. And we can create a really nice pond system here and put all the marginal plants in here, and it can be part of a bioremediation and a nice place for birders to be able to come down here and spend some time as well. Some of the excess areas will be narrow paths, probably 4 to 6 feet wide, something that I could get Pepe down, but not necessarily too much of anything else. So all of these trees started off as a single tree, but all got injured over time. I won't necessarily be taking them out, but I'll be taking out any dead parts. So I didn't show this part of this is the lower Beaver Dam right here that I've been working on. So I've been taking the materials, bringing trees into here, incorporating them into the edge, this side of the Beaver pond here. So the Beaver Dam is right here, and I'm building up this edge of it nice and wide, and there's another area down there, but unfortunately people have taken out those beavers, but they'll get repopulated over time. So, and the upper dam is right up over there, so there'll be another access road right around there. It'll come right around, so the beaver will always be able to maintain the water on the property. And again, the higher Beaver Dam is where we'll be accessing the water for the irrigation systems up higher on the property. We don't just want to have medicinal herbs and plants down in this area. We want to make sure that, like we can see the monarch flying around here, we want to make sure that there's plenty of the milkweed down in here for the birds. We want to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all of the species that naturally have been here, and also recreate the habitats for some of the species that were here before and not necessarily here, encouraged to be here now. So the beaver will eat all of the nice small green material, the cambium layer and the outer bark of so many of the different plant species that are around here. But you can see where they've chopped off and used and gathered all of this material from all of these small trees, and they'll shoot up new shots as well. But what I'll be doing is taking some of these out. But that whole area is regrowth in there right now, and the beaver will work their way through and keep doing this information. Now this is just loaded with turtles and frogs and dragonflies all over in here as well. So many beneficial organisms, wonderful plants for bioremediation, and you can see the excellent soil that's produced, this beautiful black rich soil that could be harvested and used in gardens as well. So to open some of this area up as a larger pond, I really won't be doing anything with this particular area other than grabbing some of the materials around the margins as well, and let the beaver do everything else. And we'll have the poplars in here. We'll encourage those to come up so the beaver always have a ready supply of the food resources and the building materials that they need. Recently I posted a video talking about how I'm using the upper Beaver Dam, and this is it. I've only worked 2 days in here, so I got just so far the first day and a little bit further the next day, but gradually I'm going to be building up the soil all along in here, and this is part of the upper beaver pond, and the dam goes right around, and you could see it from the other side, from the lower dam as well. So I've been working in here, excavating some of this soil out, moving it up into this area. I'll come down when it's dry and pull some more of the soil up and put it in here. More trees, more logs, build this up so I've got an access road so I can get around in this area. It'd be really nice as a nature observation areas where we have all of the plants, and again, I have taken a lot of these plants out, but we'll replant many plants all along in here. We want the ferns here, we want all of these native species here, but some of these ones, like this is a blueberry plant that was probably got up to probably close to 8 feet tall because it's starving for sunlight and no longer productive. But we have many of the smaller blueberry plants, the native ones around here, that we'll be replanting all along the edges as well. And that's another good use for the equipment, because Bumblebee can transplant many of these plants that I dig up in the fall and put them right along the margins as well. So, and this is loaded with fish out here. It used to be quite a rookery for the for all the great blue herons. I'm not sure why so many of them are gone now, but they aren't here at this time. I mean, they are here, but not the hundreds of them. The Canada geese used to be here by the thousands as well, but that's changed. There's, you know, there might be 50 or 60 at a time down here now. This is, I took down a big stone pile that was up over in there, brought it in here so I could have access across here. So this is where the chinampas are getting started down in here. And down in here, there is a water pipe right ahead of me. So that's what goes up to the sugar shack, the root cellar there. So I hope to be I got to make sure that I don't have any dead trees like this one here. So I've got to build up the road areas here and then take down the dead trees that could fall down on the solar collectors that will are necessary for powering the water pump that'll be down here. But because there's no real stone in here, I was able to get some stone in here to make it so I don't sink too much. But this pond is so high in level, it's very difficult. The moisture is right through this whole area. Great for growing things, but difficult for rebuilding these systems. So I got to work my way out, build this system up, and get so I can hook up the solar water pump system here as well. And that will have to be maintained, so I'm going to need access roads from either direction to be able to get down in here. Now we're into this area here is the area that I plan on tapping a fair number of the trees in the future. And they work their way down. Hopefully the taps will have gravity-fed lines going to these water totes. Oh, I should say there are trails that we created a few years ago that I have to reopen, but I need to put more soil down in this area. The beaver have raised the water level so high down in here that I have to build up the soil level. So as I dig out ponds, I need to be able to bring that fill down and try to maintain these areas and to build paths, walking paths, The walking paths will be large enough so that I can take down some of the trees that have exceeded their capacity to support other life and that are detrimental, in other words, a windstorm falling over and doing damage. So I do want to have many dead trees there that are good for the various, whether it's the honeybees moving into it, the woodpeckers consuming, the squirrels. So I don't want to remove every dead tree. I want to closely examine them and make sure that I'm assessing whether they are a threat to other trees around. Are they a habitat? Do they have living species in there as well? We still have some really gorgeous trees that are dead on the property, and they're housing various, owl species and all. So we don't want to affect those areas at all. So these are the lowest level of tanks. These are down about 45 feet from the high level on the property, about 30 feet down from the sugar shack, the elevation of the sugar shack. So the maple forests in here, one of the things, if you do put in lines for gathering sap and draining them into here and then pumping it out through these black plastic lines that go underground that I buried here that feed up to the sugar shack where the processing will be done. Over to the side over there, there's large stone piles, up there rather. And so one of the things I want to be able to do is be able to get to remove those stone piles and use those as ground reinforcement in the areas where the soil is too soft to move through. Because I have to have the access roads capable of moving the equipment through without damaging the roots of the trees because of the soil so soft and moving pieces of equipment around down in here. So this is one of the slow soil things that I put together. I just used some of the leaf from the forest floor, as I go around and pick up things and pile it up like this will all turn into beautiful soil over time. And so I'll need to be able to have access to this. And there's other access roads over there that I have to reopen. And there's mounded dirt piles from my brother had someone come in with a big dozer one time and push up some big piles of trees and stumps and all down in here, and so those areas I've got to get up to and reforest. I want to be putting in many black walnuts up there on the other side along the property line, but there's access roads that I cut in there which I haven't reopened yet. And that's to be able to get up and maintain the areas, be able to maintain the lines for collecting maple syrup as well. But as you can see, so many dead trees, and maybe you can notice some of these vines that are around, these huge vines that interconnect and tie all these trees together. And unfortunately, when one tree falls and it has the vines incorporated in it, it does damage to the limbs, and that's how we get many more of these split trees. So some of these trees may initially start out just great, and then we get these narrow angles, which makes it more susceptible to disease, and that's what's been happening here. So I want to be able to go ahead and select and leave a single trunk there, because every time they split apart, there's more chances of disease as well. And that's happened over and over again in the forest area. Beautiful trees to look at, but they're age limited. They won't last quite as long. Like that gorgeous tree right there is doing just fine. It hasn't been injured by a neighboring tree. So that's the thing, coming in and working, a lot of wood chipping that needs to be done as well. But each one of these limbs are a potential introduction of disease and decay in some of these trees. So we're about 500 feet now from the Beaver Pond. There are far fewer ash trees up in here, and therefore you don't see as much damage to these trees up in this area. There is some, but you see the ground isn't as littered, there isn't as many problems. So here are a couple more of the sap collecting totes. The lines go underground to feed up to the sugar shack, the root cellar in there. And we have a couple of different ways of getting around in here. And this is where I try to store some of the materials, the building materials, garden materials, fencing materials, greenhouse materials, all of those sorts of things. One of the things I would say about when I'm putting in the access roads, the biggest access roads are up there feeding down into this location, coming down from the main driveways and all. And that's to be able to get a big trailer, a big dump truck, and a large excavator on the back of it to offload it there. And then I'll use the truck with the trailer attached, and I need to have pretty good angles to be able to, pretty good radiuses so I can move around and collect up a lot of the material. Otherwise, you can spend a lot of time putting material into something like Pepe here, or we can spend less time, fewer trips, by using the dump trailer, putting the materials in the dump trailer if I'm going to be using it in different locations. So those roads down and back that I described where I'll be doing all the heavy work, I want it to be stable enough, wide enough so that I can move the truck and the trailer behind it and be able to get a large excavator down in there to work as well. So there are trails or access roads going up, right up to the main road, to the abandoned road that we own half of, that you can't see here. There's quite a distance. There's several hundred feet, 1,000 feet from where we are now to the to that road. Probably about 700 feet. Yeah, I think about that far. And then the living fence line is way over there. Pond 6 is right here, which is dry right now. I need to remove all the raspberry plants that I planted over there. I've let them get overgrown with mungwort, goldenrod, and pokeweed. We're back to the area where the almond fruit forest is. Still building more hugelkultur systems here. This was all hugelkultur, everything in here, and same thing up in here in stone wall. You can see so right down there, I don't know if you can see it, probably can't with this, there's a great blue heron, a green heron, and the 3 khaki Campbell ducks right there. So this pond is devastatingly low. So I got to get down in here and work on this some more. I did do some mowing here recently, but this is an access road here. It allows me to get up here. Sorry about the video ending abruptly there and about the the length of the video, but I really wanted to do justice trying to explain why the access roads are important. It allows me to get the equipment and tools into an area that I can meet the needs of that area as I see in the future. And I also, one of the things I've learned over time with developing these access roads, I want to develop them in such a way that the amount of maintenance to maintain the road is significantly less. So the materials that are used in there, and those materials can be gained from the same property by digging out and putting in the other ponds and the different materials. All of that wood won't go to waste. It'll be incorporated. That carbon will be captured into the soil. It'll be a great place for nutrients. It'll help to reestablish the dam walls as well. So and I hope the explanation of the zones, the amount of time and level of interaction and maintenance and the purpose of each one of those zones is important. Some of these areas will be visited very infrequently, other than if we do have this developed into the educational facility that I would hope that it would become someday, that people can spend some time down there in those areas and identifying trees and doing census on the bird species that are here, quantifying, so both identifying which species are here and getting relative numbers at different times of the season as well. So many things that I have planned for the future. We'll see if it comes out. The access roads and understanding the zones, how much time, how much energy needs to be put into those places, and understanding what went wrong that caused those trees, not just the diseased trees like the emerald ash boring damage to the ash trees, but also understanding how the trees banging into each other and the vine species that are very aggressive here, how when one tree falls in the forest, it damages 2 or 3 other trees at the same time. So being mindful and being aware of these things, we can get in there with the appropriate tools and equipment, do the appropriate maintenance early on before it becomes a big problem. So if you found this video of value, please give us a thumbs up, share it with your friends. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Permaculture is a big topic, and I know I talked a little bit about permaculture in this video. I have made videos in the past on permaculture topics, so please refer to those if you have more questions. And there are many people who just absolutely are crazy about permaculture. Lots of good videos on the web as well. Well, thanks so much for watching, folks, and have a super fantastic day. Remember, rewild if you can. Put as much of the native things into the environment. Take care. Bye-bye now.